Hello, and welcome to the High School Transition Clip Application How-To webinar, Using Data to Inform High School Transitions, hosted by the Office of the State Superintendent of Education. My name is Christina Beal. I'm the Director of College and Career Readiness at OSSI, and I'll be walking you through this webinar. This webinar is for those folks who are POCs for or interested in working with exiting 8th graders, incoming 9th graders, and/or any student that transitioned into your LEA at the high school level and the data of these students. We are likely to have data managers, school counselors, heads of school, principals, and more folks on the webinar. This is a follow-up webinar to the Early Access to Student Data Tools for Schools webinar hosted on May 12, 2020. If you would like to watch that webinar, please reach out to the programs manager, Ms. Janae Eason, at janae.eason@dc.gov, and she can point you in the right direction to be able to access the webinar. We welcome you and thank you for joining us. During this session, we will discuss the Bridge to High School Data Exchange, the key data for high school transitions, the High School Transition Qlik application, data strategies and interventions to support high school transitions based on using the Qlik application, and next steps to consider. First, I want to provide an overview of the Bridge to High School Data Exchange. Launched in 2016, the Bridge to High School Data Exchange, created by schools for schools, equips educators with key student-level information and opportunities to connect with one another to better serve students transitioning to high school. It is comprised of three components. The first part is the High School Transition Qlik application, which offers a standardized process for ensuring that essential information is transmitted quickly, automatically, and consistently for students as they move from middle school to high school and across high school LEAs. The second part is Kid Talk, which was launched in 2017 and is an annual event held each summer that offers middle and high schools an opportunity to connect in person to 1, review and share 8th grade data and offer insights to guide student-specific planning for rising 9th graders, and 2, to launch ongoing working relationships between middle and high schools to continue to support students throughout their freshman year. The third component of the Bridge High School Data Exchange is the 9th grade Outcomes Qlik application, which provides loopback data from high schools back to the middle schools from which those students came. We won't get into the specifics of this application today, but if you're interested in learning more about it, please reach out to the programs manager, Janae Eason, at janae.eason@dc.gov. Now let's talk about how to maximize the Kid Talk experience. In preparation for Kid Talk, middle and high schools are provided a list of incoming 9th graders for discussion. High schools are asked to familiarize themselves with topics provided in the Kid Talk Notes template and identify additional questions to ask middle school colleagues. You can see the sample of the template by visiting the link on your screen. Middle schools are asked to review 8th grade data, templates submitted to the High School Transition Qlik application, familiarize themselves with topics provided in the Kid Talk Notes template, and consult with teammates for additional relevant information. During the Kid Talk, middle schools and high schools focus on discussions on student strengths, and any challenges should be linked to supports, both previous and potential supports. OSSI sets the expectation that discussions will be asset and solution driven rather than labeling or bypassing students who demonstrate challenges. Post-Kid Talk, middle and high schools are asked to share knowledge with their teams and develop strategies to support specific student needs that can be assessed and monitored throughout the year. Please note that receiving quantitative data through the High School Transition application and qualitative data through Kid Talk are only the first steps. The true value of these tools is determined by how LEAs act on the data to further their systems of student support based on the needs of their incoming class. In regards to registering for the data exchange in Kid Talk, LEAs can register for this program each spring. This year's registration for LEAs is still open, and interested LEAs can still sign up by contacting Janae Eason. If your LEA is interested in signing up for Kid Talk, please complete the form found on your screen. You can also feel free to contact Janae Eason at janae.eason@dc.gov, and she can answer any questions and provide further information. Now we're going to discuss the key data for high school transitions. First, what is the High School Transition Qlik application? This Qlik application provides participating high school LEAs a preview of student-level enrollment and outcome data to support their students prior to the first official day of school. We will discuss the specific data elements in the application in another part of this webinar. The targeted users for the application include LEA data managers, heads of school, principals, and counselors. Regarding the timeline for data availability, as LEAs consider the value of high school transition data in planning for the upcoming school year, please note that data usually becomes available in late July, early August. This can vary by LEA. This timeline is constrained by the high school transition application's reliance on data from MySchoolDC. Because LEA student information systems send enrollment data to OSSE's statewide longitudinal education database, also known as SLED, at different points during the summer, users should be mindful that data may change frequently during their primary planning timeframes. Here are a couple of things you need to know regarding accessing the Qlik application. First, if your high school LEA participates in the Bridge to High School Data Exchange, talk to your LEA data manager about how to access the data you need from the High School Transition Qlik application. For LEA data managers, more information on how you can assign heads of schools, principals, and counselors access to the high school transition application can be found in the LEA Points of Contact Guide by following the link on your screen. Credentials to Qlik are the same as SLED credentials. In order to obtain credentials to Qlik, one must complete a statewide longitudinal education data, aka SLED training. A SLED credential is required to access Qlik. Depending on your LEA's policies and procedures around data privacy, work with your LEA data manager to ensure you are listed in eSchool Plus and assigned the LEA data manager, head of school, principal, or counselor role if your LEA allows other roles outside of the data manager to have direct access to Qlik applications. To access the Qlik application, go to analysis.osse.dc.gov and log in with your SLED credential. Now we're going to dive deeper into the High School Transition Qlik application. The data elements of this application include student enrollment data for incoming 9th, 10th, and 11th grade students. This includes elements such as student USI, the sharing LEA in school, the receiving LEA in school, enrollment status, and so on. Demographic data includes name, date of birth, gender, race, ethnicity, farm status, English language learner status, the at-risk and homeless indicators, student with disability status, and so on. Attendance data includes in-seat attendance, attendance type, and absence percentage. Statewide assessment data, usually including PARCC, math, and ELA scores and levels. Stay tuned for details on what testing will be included in this year's application given the pause in testing at the end of this school year. Math and English course names and grades for 8th and 9th grades. And new this year, yes, no flags for recommendations for academic and or social emotional intervention for incoming 9th graders. Please note that OSSE is not interested in explicit discipline data and only requesting for the middle school LEA to share whether or not they recommend academic or social emotional interventions for students they are sending. In addition to these standard data elements, LEAs have the option to include scaled data for a number of co-academic student indicators. In light of COVID-19 and the disrupted school year, we encourage you to consider including these data fields for your students to provide their receiving high schools with a baseline understanding of their social emotional skills and well-being. We know creating data-informed and supportive 9th grade experiences for students will be even more important as students return in the fall. Once you are in the Qlik application, there are two tabs from which you can gather your LEAs or students' data. This is a screenshot of what the bottom of the Student Details tab in the Qlik application looks like and shows you all of the data elements that I listed on the previous slide. Please note that the data you see in front of you is from a training application, so it is not real student data. This slide shows you what the High School Transition Application Summary tab provides. This is the second of the two tabs that I mentioned previously. This Summary tab provides the aggregate number of students and the distribution of the sharing middle schools. This page also provides the ability to filter the data by high school if your LEA has multiple high schools. First-time ninth grader status, at-risk indicator, student with disability status, and gender. However, if you are a counselor or principal, you will only get access to your school's data within the LEA. This page includes a student count, as well as charts demonstrating a variety of key metrics. Check out the image on your screen. This slide shows you more of what you will see on the Student Details tab within the Qlik application. The Student Details sheet provides detailed 8th grade end-of-year student outcomes for your high school's incoming 9th graders from their previous school year. This sheet includes bar charts with PARCC, ELA, and math levels. You can see this on your screen in front of you. This Student Details sheet also shows bar charts for the end-of-year math and English grades, and a table with all student details at the very bottom of the page. Data on this page can be filtered by Student USI, Sharing LEA, Math and English course failure, and current grade level. Also note that you can see this information for incoming 10th and 11th graders as well. Now that you know how to see the data in the Qlik application, let's talk about how to export the data. First, go to the Student Details sheet. Then right-click in the Student Details chart at the bottom of the page, and you will see the following menu pop up with the option to export data. Next, click the arrow next to export, and you will see this menu. For step 4, select Export Data, and you will see a pop-up prompting you to click a link to download your data file. Step 5, click on the link, click here to download your data file, and you will then see the following pop-up in the bottom bar of your window, prompting you to select the file for download. Click on the Excel file name in the bottom left-hand corner of your window. Finally, the file with all data for your students will be available for you to save as an Excel document. Before we move on from this subject, I want to provide reminders and resources around data privacy. The High School Transition Qlik application contains sensitive student-level data. For this reason, to obtain access to a Qlik app, a person must be listed in the eSchool Plus Points of Contact list under an authorized role type. While OSSI encourages LEA and school-based teams to work together to prepare to serve incoming students, staff who have access to a Qlik application must ensure they are following LEA data policy and protocol when sharing student-level data with their colleagues and teams. Additional resources for data privacy can be found below, including the OSSI and federal privacy laws, which describes how OSSI complies with key federal laws on student privacy and data, the U.S. Department of Education's Protecting Student Privacy, which has resources for school officials and FAQs, and the Data Quality Campaign, a spotlight for student data use, which includes a helpful FERPA decision tree graphic. Please remember that all LEAs are required to have a data privacy policy. Please be sure you know and are aware of your LEA's data privacy policies before downloading these kinds of Excel files, which include a large amount of personally identifiable information of your students. To get technical support for the High School Transition Qlik application, first, use OSSI support resources to troubleshoot data system issues, as well as the OSSI support tool to get help with tougher challenges at ossihelp.dc.gov. For more information, including timelines, data elements, and FAQs, Middle and high school LEAs should visit osce.dc.gov/page/bridge high school. Finally, for questions or concerns that cannot be answered using the above resources, please contact the Programs Manager, Janae Eason, at janae.eason@dc.gov. Now we're going to talk about data strategies and interventions to support high school transitions. Some general strategies to assist in 8th to 9th grade transition include starting with creating a transition team that meets regularly. Think about reviewing your data and picking an area for focus, such as attendance or a certain core subject area. Try creating an implementation strategy. What resources do you have or can you create? Resources might include one-to-one mentors, new curriculum or software, home visits. What are the next steps? Who will do what and when? Next, create a small target group of students for implementation. Finally, use data when you can to measure student results. Data such as formative assessments, homework, grades, completion rates, attendance, program completion, etc. may be helpful to you and your team. Next, think about adding new data to supplement the transition data you already have. Ask yourself, what data is important and readily available in the Qlik application, but not in the data you already have? Then use the OSCE-provided USI to match students to the new data file you download from the Qlik application. In Excel, you can use the VLOOKUP formula to pull data from a larger file for a specific student or group of students using Student USI. For example, if you have students listed by USI on tab 1, you can use the VLOOKUP formula to look up each student's OSCE-assigned USI on other tabs with larger amounts of data, and then return the student data you want to pull back to your list of students and their USI numbers on tab 1. You can then create a pivot table to do some initial analysis. Think about what pieces of data stand out. Think about what feels most challenging for students. Once you have all of this data in front of you, try creating strategies that can be measured. When selecting possible strategies for implementation, consider the following. Who are you trying to affect? How will you use the results? What does success look like? Over what time frame do you expect to see changes? Is there any way to consider student input or engage students as co-creators when designing support strategies? Next, think about whether or not you have data to measure the outcome. Consider the following. How will you measure quantitative versus qualitative data? If the outcome can't be measured directly now, are there proxies like survey data? When will you need the data to be available? And how will you measure the outcome? Up next is to select target groups and measure progress. Now that you have selected your area of focus and implementation strategy, narrow down a group of students to measure outcomes. Start with a small group so it's manageable and consider the following. What do the students you want to focus on have in common? How many students can your team support? Are there specific teachers, classes, or even schools where you want to focus? Finally, we want to provide you with a data exercise that you can consider participating in with the appropriate POCs at your school or LEA. Pretend your high school would like to implement a new summer bridge program for your incoming 9th graders. Think about the following with your team. Who would be on your transition team? What student population would you use to create the target group? How will you select your target group members? What data do you want to collect for outcomes? How often will you meet to review data and evaluate the success of the program? You can use the data from the high school transitions application to implement this exercise with your colleagues. Now I'm going to talk about next steps to consider. First, if you are not sure if your LEA is part of the Bridge to High School Data Exchange, reach out to Janae Eason at janae.eason@dc.gov and CC your LEA's data manager. Second, Ensure you or someone from your LEA has access to the high school transition Qlik application by connecting with your LEA's data manager. Third, when you know your LEA is part of the Bridge to High School data exchange, consider committing to taking action so you can make data-driven decisions using the high school transition Qlik application. Possible actions may include contacting your LEA data manager to get access to your transition data, creating a transition team at your LEA, or implementing a new strategy with your transition team. Here's our contact information one more time. For any questions or concerns or for follow-up information, please reach out to Janae Eason, the Programs Manager, at janae.eason@dc.gov. Thank you so much for viewing this webinar. We hope that you learned something new today and that you'll reach out to us if you have any questions. We look forward to having you as part of our Bridge to High School data exchange and working with you to access your LEA's data using the high school transition Qlik application. Thank you for everything you do to serve our DC students.